When something is haunted, you know it. A ghost always makes itself known. When a home is haunted, the floors creak and the shadows dance. When a battlefield is haunted, gunshots still echo out and the soil never seems to settle. When a film is haunted, it screams and glows like a dying star. Like sage, the celluloid burns. The Misfits is a haunted film. It is a film of cosmic consequence. It features a trio of utterly doomed sex symbols. It was Clark Gable's last film. He would die only 2 weeks after filming had completed, some say as a direct cause of stunts performed in the film. The Misfits is also Marilyn Monroe's last completed film, and hers is the most eerily prophetic performance. The Misfits also documents Montgomery Clift's last gasp of life. After the Misfits, Clift would relentlessly pursue a self-destructive path that ultimately led to his suicide. The Misfits accidentally recorded finality, for all of the major stars were sex symbols that had been the source of both praise and worship and were equally, tragically, immediately damned. The Misfits was about the end of their lives and the beginning of their eternal stars. The Misfits was a film about death. What makes it so haunting is that it was about 3 particular, specific deaths. Rather than death as a philosophical idea, The Misfits was about death in 3 very particular ways. The deaths of Clark Gable, Marilyn Monroe, and Montgomery Clift. It is a film of mythic importance. It is the careful work of ghosts. It's a film about 3 beautiful losers. The fact that the trio and the Misfits were all singularly representative of sex and celebrity at different stages of Hollywood's history is an astounding thing when contemplating the cultural implications of casting them all together in a film like this. That it was each one's last gasp of cinematic life gives the film an inconsolably elegiac quality. The film is basically about a group of misfit cowboys and a beautiful divorcee that set out to wrangle wild mustangs in order to sell them to be grounded up into dog food. Since the screenplay was written by none other than Arthur Miller, the metaphor inherent in the synopsis should be painfully self-evident. Miller wrote it with his then-wife Monroe in mind. This also adds the creepiness of the character dilemma. You get the feeling that no one's really playing a character, but dreamlike versions of themselves. It makes them that much more real. Directed by the legendary and amazing John Huston, who was on a drunken bender throughout the entire production and routinely gambled away half the film's budget, The Misfits is a film that should never have been made. It is a true movie miracle that it was ever completed in the first place, with Monroe's spirit worsening and Gable on death's door, with Clift's humanity finally lost to him, and with Huston's alcoholism running amok. The Misfits was literally a film about misfits, made by misfits, and for misfits. Clift's presence may have been the most tragic of all. A terrible car crash in 1956 forever transformed the actor's face and made a true junkie out of him. In The Misfits, he is jittery and seems to be subdued in some sort of perpetual detox. He plays the disenfranchised Percy Howland. Clift brings an orphaned quality to the rodeo rider that rips a hole in the viewer's heart. Another sad metaphor that is not missed on anyone with contextual knowledge is that of the horse that sends Clift's character for a ride. In the film, Clift is given a vicious beating by a horse. It tramples his skull in front of a crowd of onlookers. This apparently not being the only time it has happened. Clift is dazed and concussed. Rather than properly care for the wounded rodeo cowboy, the crowd convinces him to get back on the horse again, the metaphor, so their amusement could continue. Gable's character is the main instigator of this terrible trickery. Gable literally deludes Clift into taking another beating from the horse. Horse, as common slang for heroin or morphine, hence why I'm saying it the way that I am, and hence the overarching metaphor. Clift nearly kills himself in front of an audience, and the audience makes him do it again. This is wholly reflective of Clift's own life and drug addictions. The horse scene in the Misfits is a perfect representation of Clift's long suicide. It was so drawn out. The fact that this metaphor was explicitly written about Montgomery Clift and expressed by Montgomery Clift is just one of the many eerie events that take place in the film. Clift is used by every single character but one, Marilyn's. The most emotionally agonizing facet of the film is the relationship between Clift and Monroe's characters, which seems to be symbolic of a much larger scheme. Monroe says to Clift, "Don't hurt yourself anymore, Percy. Take care of yourself." When she says those words to him, my heart instantly shattered into several dejected shards. I almost wept at that moment. Their characters seemed so individually and uniquely doomed. Both Clift and Monroe seemed to express a last gasp of life, and more than that, a tragic companionship that the others didn't seem to possess or share. A deeper, esoteric understanding existed between Clift and Monroe. Once again, I nearly wept. Clift demonstrates a last moral heroism as he attempts to free the hog-tied Mustangs with Monroe. That's the last glimpse of the screen hero that once brought so much joy to the public. Clift's finality was the most heartbreaking and the most humanly tragic. Gable plays what he is. He is an aged Casanova cowboy, the epitome of manliness and proudly uneducated. He operates as the film's patriarch. What is most devastating about his role is that he is also the film's embarrassment. Gable's character is oblivious, simple-minded, and a sore on progressive America. His children are so humiliated by him that they abandon him at a bar, leaving him screaming their names in utter despair. Being the oldest sex symbol of the piece, Gable brings with him an air of wisdom. His character seems to be talking about things that exist outside of the script. He seems to be providing commentary about the twisted and beautiful deaths of celebrities. He is the most self-assured and confident character. He is the only one who seemed perfectly comfortable with the idea of death from the start. Gable's finality was a farewell, a well-spoken goodbye, a voice in the dark. Oh, Marilyn. Marilyn Monroe. In the film, her soul finally seeps through, her true soul. She comes across as pitiful and helpless, beautiful and sexy, ethereal, cosmic, and misunderstood, brand new like a baby. I see her as a living monument to beauty. Marilyn Monroe was God's great artistic accomplishment. She was a work of total perfection. She couldn't help but be the most beautiful thing in the world. The Misfits brings the calamity of beauty to the forefront as Monroe's body makes savages out of men. Men misappropriate her beauty. They take advantage of her perfections. Monroe can't help but be physically otherworldly. She was a force of nature, and men changed around her. They turned into different things like monsters and grabbed her and blamed her for their aggression simply for being so beautiful. Gable's character brings up a fascinating paradox when dealing with Monroe. In the film, he remarks about how Monroe must be the saddest girl in the world. Monroe, surprised by Gable's words, says that she's actually always told that she must be the happiest. Gable then spins an incredible Miller insight. He says that's only because she makes so many men feel happy, that they are reflecting their own emotions onto her. Marilyn Monroe was such a beautiful creature that men lost track of their own feelings and selves, existential and physical ones. No one ever really knew what she felt. All they knew was how she made them feel. She was so beautiful that, had I ever met her, I would definitely lose track of the world in her lips. I would be just as guilty, just as existentially and physically guilty as the rest of them. The Misfits wildly proves that the busty goddess was human after all, that she had a sad soul no one could fix. Her sad soul broke my heart. Monroe transcended the medium to communicate the sadness of a rose. If we could never understand her beauty, how could we ever understand her sadness? Monroe's finality was not in her kiss, but in the stars. Her finality, her end, was as faultless as her immaculate beauty. The Misfits is one of the most compelling pieces of art ever made. In order to truly appreciate the film, you must understand its metaphors in context. These three doomed superstars gave this film their all. What I mean by that is their spirit. The Misfits is haunted by the ghosts of Clark Gable, Marilyn Monroe, and Montgomery Clift. They left themselves here. I fully believe that they talk to whoever is willing to watch them. When a house is haunted, the lights suddenly go out. When a film is haunted, the light never fades. The Misfits is a light that will never wane, a ghost that will never leave, a rose that will never wilt, three beautiful losers that will never die. The Misfits is all about three beautiful losers that will never, ever die. Thank you.